Night in London held its breath the way only old stone can, steady, patient, indifferent to headlines, while inside the palace a quiet decision changed the weight of things. No trumpets, no balcony, no staged silhouette against floodlit columns, only a narrow room, a green baize blotter burnished by generations, lamplight pooling like warm honey, and the soft rattle of metal set down with more meaning than 1,000 speeches. Keys do not belong to romance. They belong to responsibility. And when a monarch lays them within reach of the heir, and the woman who steadies him, the room learns a new gravity, and the building itself seems to exhale. Buckingham has always been less a home than a mechanism, a central nervous system that conducts ceremony and crisis with the same impersonal efficiency. Its gates do not merely guard privacy, they guard continuity, routes through which paper travels, phones connect, signatures appear, and decisions are carried like current from one node to another. The red boxes breathe in and out, the private secretary's pencil draws tied lines on the day, messengers know which corridor holds which temperature. To be given the keys, symbolic and practical, is to be invited into the circuitry. You are no longer just a figure in portraits, or a silhouette on a balcony. You are a moving part, expected to hum at the same frequency as the machine. The king did not narrate the moment, he is too old for flourish, and the hour was too honest for it. His voice, when he used it, had the worn smoothness of a man who learned that explanation often harms more than it helps. His hands were not theatrical, they simply revealed how time insists upon itself even in men trained to ignore it. He did not say, "I yield." He did not need to. The gesture was not abdication, it was architecture, load shared before beams begin to groan. He has lived long enough to know that a crown is not a hat, but a system, and systems survive, because they learn to distribute weight ahead of the crack. The metal on the table carried the rest. William understood at once. He has learned that the institution needs fewer words than the public imagines and more stamina than the public suspects. He had come to the crown's threshold 1,000 times in rehearsal, briefings, audiences, walkabouts where hands carry obligations home in their palms. This felt different. This felt like the moment when rehearsal becomes performance and you discover the script is only half written. Behind him, not a step out of line and never in his shadow, stood Catherine, calm where he is intent, exact where he is instinctive, modern in sympathy and traditional in duty, the rare human bridge between the country's memory and its appetite for change. If the keys are a test, she is the answer written cleanly in the margin. Absence can be louder than outrage. The Queen Consort did not take that room, and the silence created by her non-appearance told its own story, one not of scandal, but of emphasis. The king had framed the future in practical terms. Who will carry the strain of the day-to-day, whose judgment will be asked first, whose diaries will be allowed to reorder the building's heartbeat. For those who read palaces like texts, the paragraph was clear. This was not unkindness, nor a rebuke written in cold ink. It was the choice a sovereign makes, when the institution needs a single center of gravity, and too many orbits have begun to tug. She has fought storms and outlasted derision. She remains necessary in rooms where steadiness and low volume preserve dignity. But mechanics are not sentiment, and this was a mechanical decision. It is easy, in an age of headlines that run faster than blood, to mistake intimacy for intrigue. Rumor prefers verbs like seize and plot, reality prefers verbs like steady and share. The king has never been impulsive. He is not a man who bargains with today at the expense of tomorrow. He has also learned, late, perhaps, but thoroughly, that time is no longer negotiable. Health, whispered about in the way courtiers always whisper about it, may have sharpened his sense of calendar and consequence. History gave him a long apprenticeship and a short reign. He would have it said that the brevity strengthened rather than diminished the crown. That is why the keys mattered more than proclamations do. Behind doors that do not gossip, Father and son have spoken more plainly this past year than in any other. The conversations are not romantic. They are about loads, about how much a day can carry without fraying, about the strange mathematics of duty in which delegation is not abdication, but fidelity to the work. A sovereign, who has waited a lifetime, knows better than most how cruelly a title consumes a man, if he tries to hold it and everything else. It is not less kingly to share. It is more enduring. The late Queen taught that discipline by example, the quiet miracle of never being the bottleneck. The lesson has finally been cashed. Catherine's part in this is not decorative. The nation has watched her long enough to understand that poise is only the surface of something tougher. Through tempests of scandal that were not of her making, through the exhaustion of unending scrutiny, she has neither traded intimacy for popularity nor sacrifice for performance. People older than 50, those who remember Elizabeth's and showy competence as a kind of national balm, recognize the echo. Catherine's competence is contemporary, her warmth unforced, her discipline quiet. She has the trick that keeps affection from becoming a liability. She gives just enough of the person to humanize the role and keeps the rest for the people who matter. That is how you turn public love into oxygen when the air thins. The building adjusted almost at once, the way old ships adjust to new captains, no drama, only altered balance. Diary secretaries, who have seen 40 winters, know how to change a pattern without leaving fingerprints. A few calls that once went to the king now went to Wales House. Red boxes walked new paths. The audience list for Tuesday mornings gained 2 initials. Meetings that used to end with "We'll ask His Majesty" now ended with "Let TRH decide." Nothing defiant, nothing theatrical, only the slow establishment of a habit, which is how monarchies digest excitements. The equerries noticed it first, the footmen heard it in footfall rhythms, the messengers felt it in lift doors that opened on different floors than they used to. Not everyone noticed with grace. Houses where grievance outlives usefulness learned again that bitterness is a poor strategist. Men once accustomed to minor tides of influence felt the tide go slack. A disgraced duke discovered that no corridor leads anywhere now. 2 dutiful cousins discovered that lineage without portfolio is only biography. A prince across the ocean, in love with his hurt, because it listens, read the news and heard a door shut that he had already slammed himself. Resentment leaks, it boasts, it insists that destruction is proof of power. In the days that followed, the familiar leak performed its old tricks, turning a sensible recalibration into the kind of noise that flatters those who make it and exhausts those who must govern through it. The palace did what palaces do when noise is not the point. It refused to dignify gossip with set pieces, and refused to deny reality with silence so thick that fantasy did the rest. It simply kept working, with a slightly different rhythm. Appearances were made where they should be, longer conversations held where they hadn't been, a school visited without fuss, a regimental anniversary carried with proper ceremony. The lights went on at the right time and off in the right order. Outside, London clattered and speculated, inside, routine braided itself into reassurance. Camilla will not go quietly into a smaller frame. She has endured too much contempt to surrender to a new diminishment without answering it with purpose. Those who underestimate her confuse softness of voice with softness of will. She will find a field where her presence is more than tolerated. She will choose work that makes it harder to dismiss her as ballast. Literacy where it is not fashionable, rural health where it is not headline-friendly, the quiet pieties that hold a country together when politics forgets how. In this family, redemptions and relevancies are seldom symmetrical. They do not need to be, provided the core remains intact. The core is where and stands. She is the house's conscience not because she lectures, but because she does not. The late Queen's creed, service instead of spectacle, survives most honestly in her. When the system must shift, she attends to the bolts. If she is in the room and still, you may proceed. If she is not, think again. That night she was in the building. And stillness had the steadiness of assent. A legend of clipped sentences and unshowy stamina, she has become the family's metronome. If her tempo holds, the rest can change around it without losing the beat. William felt the weight privately and without theatrics. The question that presents itself to every heir presented itself to him, too. Readiness is a word for exams, not for lives. You do not pass into sovereignty because you have completed a course. You pass because the river bends and you are the next bank. Doubt, handled properly, is not weakness. It is an instrument that keeps a man inside his proper scale. He does not seem to want a crown so much as he accepts it, and that acceptance is what the country, especially the unfoolable middle, trusts. It is not romance to say that Catherine steadies him. It is record. Out in the nation that pays less attention than commentators think and more than cynics admit, the shift will register where such things always do, in tone. A little less of, send it up and see, and a little more of, let's settle it here. A little fewer speeches in marble rooms and a few more conversations in village halls. Fewer appearances that light the sky for a night and more that illuminate one charity for a year. That is not retreat, it is economy. The monarchy's talent, when it remembers itself, is not to outshine government, but to outlast cycles. To be boring on purpose, so the country can be dramatic without breaking. The week that followed taught the old lesson again: institutions do not live by drama, they live by routine. Turn up, listen longer than you speak, put your name where it helps and not where it glitters, make the call yourself when discretion is the value, delegate when you are the bottleneck. A sovereign can be dignified and human if he is not greedy for credit. An heir can be decisive if he is not defensive. A princess can be beloved if she never begs for it. The late Queen kept the furniture of the state steady by never rearranging it for applause. If this new habit holds, the furniture will not creak even when the weather does. Those who love conspiracy will insist that the act was a coronation in disguise. It was not. Crowns require law, liturgy, witnesses, and a country's assent. Keys require only trust. Trust is the rarer commodity, hard-won, easily squandered, unpurchasable at any price. The king extended it, the prince and princess received it without fuss. That is all. Yet for a monarchy trying to live in a century that will not make room for it unless it earns the right, that all is everything, the admission that endurance is a craft, not a magic trick, the recognition that the late Queen's quiet genius was not personality but method, the decision to imitate the method rather than chase the myth. Outside, the city's night pressed its ear to the windows, hunting for theatre. Inside, a table remembered better nights and worse ones and understood that this was something rarer, a preventative act. In time, someone will write that the rain shifted tone in a room with no cameras, that the heir's hand moved a ledger closer, that a princess read 3 pages, and ask the only question that saved an hour. They will not be wrong. But perhaps they will also notice what the public, when it is not being hurried by noise, understands instinctively, that a crown kept steady by 3 people of workable temperament is safer than a court full of dazzlers, that continuity, humbly managed, is more persuasive than 1,000 elaborate gestures, that sympathy without sentimentality is the grown-up language of duty. So the keys stay in careful hands. The work goes on. The nation, older than any of its news cycles, asks only for decency and competence. It will forgive almost anything for the sake of those 2. In the months ahead, there will be matches to watch and losses to carry, schools to visit and names to remember, charities to resupply with attention, memorials to keep, the ordinary miracle of keeping the calendar from becoming theatre. If, when the day ends, the gates close on time and the lights go out in the right order, that will be achievement enough. The rest, the grievance, the certainty that every shuffle is a plot, is for people without rooms to tend. It is not the end of an era. It is the beginning of a wiser habit. And if the habit holds, if the late Queen's discipline survives not as nostalgia, but as practice, then the keys were not a secret at all. They were a promise, made in metal, to a country that prefers steadiness to spectacle, and is old enough to know the difference.